So a few days ago, Valve released a patch for TF2, pretty good sized one. That came, of course, with a lot of the competitive assets that allow us to do these stress tests now. And prior to that, it had been a while since we had a new patch. But in that patch, they added what at first appeared to be the answer to our prayers and goat sacrifices, and that, of course, is the basic stat clock module, which could be applied to items. At first, I thought it meant that I could finally put a stat clock onto my favorite skinned weapons, go in game and start tracking kills with some of the great looking things that I have. But upon closer inspection, there came a catch, that is that the civilian stat clock can only be applied to civilian grade weapons, meaning that not only are they limited to skins, but they are also limited to the very bottom skins. This means that the only way to get any strange drop skins above civilian requires trading up. 10 skins to do it. While Strange and Factory New is not required for all 10 skins to have a Strange Factory New output, it is the only guaranteed way. Valve, I speak for no small part of the community when I say thank you very much for listening to us and adding the ability to have stat clocks on drop collection weapons. It does give me hope that it means you are willing to go against some of CSGO's conventions to better accommodate TF2, but the stat clock issue is still just that, it's an issue still. This new feature is a step in the right direction, no doubt, but it doesn't cover everything we need yet. Now, I do know that there are certain new things you are working on, as is evident by the new inspect animations for drinks, sandwiches, force of natures, and pans, so forgive my ignorance if I suggest something you are already working on. But there are still issues with the new stat clocks and Stranges in general that many people would like to see addressed, myself included. Hence the reason for this video. Firstly, civilian grade stat clocks. These are most definitely a step in the right direction. However, the lack of ability to trade them up on their own is going to make Strange drop weapons more rare and expensive than case weapons by a huge margin. Someone did the math of trading up a Strange Factory New top shelf minigun, a weapon that I long for more than anything, and it is not pretty. The problem with trade ups is basic exponents, really. The cost of creation and value output is exponentially higher, especially when the exponent is 10. As such, we absolutely need a way to trade up the stat clocks on their own with diminishing requisites. 5 weapons to trade up a civilian stat clock for this example will say said stat clocks are $1. So one civilian stat clock is $1 and requires 5 freelance weapons. 5 civilians should trade up to 1 freelance. This means a freelance stat clock is $5, a fair price for decent but still cheap weapons. From this, 4 freelance stat clocks for 1 mercenary clock. This price would ensure that mercenary clocks are not really worth using on the case mercenary items due to their prices, but would make drop-only skins akin to cheaper assassin grades, making it worth it. Then 3 mercenary clocks can be traded for 1 commando clock. It's about $60 to strangify what are akin to elite grades, but still definitely lower quality. Certainly a better system monetarily and likewise not worth using on case-only commando grades. This system would ensure that applicable stat clocks are available for all weapon grades. It would preserve the price disparity between cases and drops and make it so that we aren't limited to weapon trade-ups to get stuff that we actually want and like. While on the topic of stat clocks, there is another topic worth mentioning: Stranges. Not the fancy skinned stocks with stat clocks, just normal run-of-the-mill Stranges. Valve has been pretty good lately with what they've been doing economically. They've been definitely doing what players have wanted, and I think one of the things that a lot of players have wanted easily since Gunmetal is the ability to have stat clocks on just, your average Strange weapon. So they could prove that they are willing to continue supporting things that are already in the game but that are old, and so to do that they should do 2 things. Firstly, release a crate containing Strange versions of the remaining unlock weapons without Strange quality variants. Eureka Effect, Sandwich, pretty much anything since Love and War has gone without Strange variants for far too long, and that needs to be remedied. Next, they need to add a blank stat clock tool which can be applied to Strange items. This could be made to serve as a metal sink, in fact. For a few refined, one could craft a basic stat clock which could then be applied to any already Strange item, namely items that are already inspectable on which a stat clock could easily be placed. The limitation of this would likely be akin to that of a Strange part in that it doesn't make an item Strange, but is instead an addition to an already Strange item. For most normal weapons like your rocket launchers and scatterguns, application is easy. However, for odd weapons like lunchboxes, throwable, and smaller knives, the solution is still simple, and that is a watch. Similar to the death watches the stat clocks were inspired by, wrist-mounted stat clocks for certain stranges could solve the issue of incompatible weapons without really any place to put the stat clock. By doing this, Valve would give players more chances for customizing stranges and decking out their favorite weapons, not to mention how great the ability to see your kill count without having to go into your inventory is. Now obviously some stranges can't have stat clocks, razorbacks and cosmetics come to mind, but at the same time some items can't have kill streak kits because they aren't compatible. Same principle applies here. Stat clocks can still easily go on quite a variety of things that make sense while not going on things that wouldn't really work. The inclusion of stat clock attachments could easily provide an excellent metal sink, help bridge the gap between traditional stranges and the case stranges, and also allow players the option, rather than the requirement, of having a stat clock on stranges, as updating stranges to all have stat clocks by default is something that certainly there are people who would not want. As there are people, for example, owners of Festives, Australians, or just people who don't like the stat clocks, who probably don't want a stat clock on their weapon and are just fine with it being the way it is. But to close out this video, I want to once again say thank you to the TF team for making a concession in the system and giving us these Civ-grade stat clocks. It is most certainly a step in the right direction that many of us are grateful for, but it's not 100% perfect yet, and as such, there is room for improvement that I hope will be capitalized on.